Well, yeah. Yeah, I was about to say I was on the verge of coming out with that. That's pretty risky because while $700 may be a lot back during the 50s, to keep up that momentum, to always be writing stories, to always be writing scripts that consistently sell, that would be a gamble. And he just kept it. He just kept his day job for a while until he was just confident. He just kept selling the stories.
Well, he had a couple of things. Number one, when he resigned from the L.A.P.D. in '56, I think it was June 7th, he was already pretty well rolling along with Ziv. He was the head writer for the program West Point Story. In fact, early on that year, I found that Ziv wanted to fly him to New York to visit the point, and he still had that pesky job at the L.A.P.D. to go to every day. So he went in, and he had plenty of accumulated off time, and he just said, well, I'll be gone for about a week and a half, 2 weeks. And they went, okay, fine. And so he went to New York. So he had this extra job that was paying. He was probably making, at that time, he was probably pulling in as much as a captain was. He knew that they needed him very much on the police department, so he could pretty well set whatever he wanted to do. Ultimately, there was too much money, there were too many demands on his time, but when he quit, he had a 3-year net. That meaning that the LAPD's policy was that for 3 years, if he decided to come back, he could have at the same rank that he left.
During his time as a writer, did he have any inkling, any idea in his mind that he would be making another leap into being a producer?
Yes, he early on decided that he wanted to be a producer because he and the family were watching Highway Patrol, the old Broderick Crawford series that Ziv produced, and he saw what a producer had done to his story, and so Gene became rather irritated and said, well, it's obvious I'm going to have to be a producer to prevent that, to prevent someone else rewriting my material, which of course Gene was famous for in later years, especially on Star Trek, rewriting other writers' material.
Well, that kind of goes without saying. That's a TV business.
Yes.
That's just it in general. It's a collaborative effort, and it's a miracle if a writer is ever able to get anything on TV that remotely resembles the original material.
Well, understand that film is a director's medium. Television is a producer's medium. Writers come and go, directors come and go, but it's the job of the producer or the creator-producer or the creator-writer-producer to maintain a continuity of the stories and the characters, and that's what Gene did in Star Trek.
So we're talking about a time when, I'm kind of losing track of the years here, but we're talking about a time, I Love Lucy, Your Show of Shows, The Highwaymen, Westerns.
Late 1950s.
Late 50s, and
Late
he comes up with an idea about making a science fiction program. What obstacles did he find in trying to pitch that idea?
Well, at that time, he was working for MGM. Actually, he was working for Arena Productions, the people that later did The Man from U.N.C.L.E. He was doing The Lieutenant. He had created and produced The Lieutenant for Arena Productions at MGM. And he had this idea for a television show that was science fiction. Actually, it was human drama in a science fiction setting. He took it over to MGM, and they said, we don't think we can do it. See, up to that point, science fiction on television had either been kiddie dramas like Space Patrol and Tom Corbett's Space Cadet and Captain Video and that sort of thing, or it had been anthology programs that were often more fantasy than science fiction, such as The Twilight Zone or The Outer Limits. The question that everyone had was, could you do a weekly series, hour-long series, with continuing characters, with the needed production values, the opticals, the costumes, and the quality stories? Could you do all of that on a weekly basis for a reasonable amount of money? MGM decided that no, they couldn't. And what was it? I think it was Alan Simpson wrote Gene a very funny memo. He said, I'm very sorry to see you leaving the studio. He was going over to Desilu at the time. I'm sorry to see you go. I know you're going to be successful. It's kind of like a man watching his mother-in-law drive off a cliff in his new Cadillac convertible.
Star Trek. When do we get into that?
Well, Star Trek came along in the early 60s, and it was an amalgamation of a lot of different things. Gene had done a pilot at Screen Gems called APO 923, where he had 3 officer characters. One was kind of the emotional one was kind of the smart one, the less emotional one, and then there was a kind of a central character of the captain around which things revolved. He created a program that never went anywhere. It never got beyond the concept stage of an ocean liner that had various story settings, stories set on the ocean liner, the captain and the first mate and the purser and all. This is 20 years before L.A.P.D. But out of that, he took the idea that the ship itself would be a character. He had an idea of a dirigible set in the 1890s going around the world with a multi-ethnic crew doing feats of daring do and righting wrongs. So he kind of put all of these disparate things together and put it and called it Star Trek, and worked out the details over a period of time.
And is this one of these legends that grow out from the telling, or is there really truth in the story that when Star Trek first aired, Gene's father went from neighbors to neighbors apologizing for what his son had done?
Well, the family of which I'm quite friendly with, especially his mother, who lets me call her Nana. She's 90 years old and is just a hoot. They didn't much care for science fiction. They liked shoot-'em-ups, they liked westerns, they liked action. And Gene's dad, yes, he used to tell that story, that his father says, well, we're going to be getting him back to writing real television, and by real television, the old man meant westerns.
We're down to our last 4 minutes here, but I want to get into some of the themes that made their way onto Star Trek, that made some sponsors nervous, as well as maybe even made just the general American public nervous. And I was wondering if maybe you could talk about some of those. I know that many episodes of Star Trek, a few of them got into the subject of religion. Did Gene Roddenberry ever experience any flack for some of those episodes?
Well, always you're going to get letters. Interestingly enough, I found that Trek is something of a Rorschach test for the people watching it. When it was originally on the air, this most humanistic of television programs, written by a man who identified himself as a humanist, who would be the first to tell you that he did not did not buy into the Christian mythos. That show was written up in a 5-part series in the Salvation Army magazine, extolling its Christian virtues and its Christian principles. There was the equality of men and women on the program, or pretty much the equality of men and women, even though the women on the ship walked around in go-go boots and little short skirts. This was the 60s, after all. There was the equality between the races. The television's first interracial kiss was on Plato's Stepchildren in the 3rd season. Interestingly enough, while people made a bit of a fuss about Uhura and Captain Kirk kissing, no one said anything about Mr. Spock and Nurse Chapel kissing, and that was television's first interspecies kiss.
Well, people probably don't care about that kind of stuff, about something happening with the alien worlds, because I don't know that the general public, and I'm not even going to put that at the time, I'm not even going to put down the time period that Star Trek was being aired at, but there was something volatile at the time about a white man kissing an African-American woman, because this was the height of the civil rights movement.
But it was okay for a light green guy with pointed ears to kiss this white woman on television, which the ultimate irony is no one paid any attention to that. A guy that looked like Satan is going after this typical blonde beach bunny, and no one cared.